Hey, it's Jordan with Status Coup. Cornel West appeared on Meet the Press with new moderator Kristen Welker. And boy, for a new moderator, it was very much more of the same with an intense focus in every question of pushing him to drop out of the presidential race. It cumulatively got worse, so you're going to have to hang as we go through the interview. Buckle up.
Thank you for being here. We do want to talk to you about your candidacy, which has gotten a lot of attention.
I don't know. When I hear we want to talk to you about your candidacy, I'm presuming maybe one question, if we're lucky two, about, say, policies you're running on, why you're different than the Democrat or Republican candidate, what made you want to run, your life story, just something we could sprinkle in there to pretend we're not just working for the corporate duopoly to get this man to push to drop out. So she starts with, we want to talk about your candidacy.
And I want to start off by asking you about it in this context. Your longtime political ally, Senator Bernie Sanders, he's not a Democrat, but he did, as you know, run twice in the Democratic presidential primary. So let me just put the question to you. Why have you decided to run as a third-party candidate rather than a Democrat challenging President Biden?
Yes, I mean, Bernie Sanders, as you know, is my very dear brother. I have a deep love for him. We have disagreement at this historical moment. I'm thoroughly convinced that neither party is speaking to the pressing needs of poor and working people. And so the two-party system itself is becoming an impediment for the flowering of American democracy. We've got too many fellow citizens, 63% living paycheck to paycheck. And many of us know exactly what that means, no matter how big or small our check actually is. And so in that sense, I must say that it's hard to view oneself as a spoiler when there's increasing rot in the system with two parties connected to big money, Wall Street, Silicon Valley, and militarism abroad. And we need, and really the anthem of Black people, lift every voice. We need many, many more voices, and the two parties that we have are too narrow at this point.
Okay, good answer by Cornel West. Seems to be, more of what he has been pushing, which is we got a corporate duopoly, on the margins. Maybe there's a difference, but at the end of the day, the system is rotten. Maybe she would pivot to, all right, let's talk about that system. What perhaps would you do that's different? How would you get it through a very, very polarized, divided Congress? Maybe, just maybe we could ask one question. Just pretend that we're here, suggesting we might be here to talk about policy, what you could do for the country, not just be a vessel for the corporate Democratic Party, which NBC News really is. Let's continue.
Let me ask you about your past position. In 2004, you signed a letter of former Ralph Nader advisors urging progressives in swing states to vote for John Kerry. I'm going to read you a little bit of this letter that you signed. Quote, "This year, we urge support for Kerry Edwards in all swing states, even while we strongly disagree with Kerry's policies on Iraq and other issues. For people seeking progressive social change in the United States, removing George W. Bush from office should be the top priority in the 2004 presidential election. Progressive voters for John Kerry in swing states may prove decisive in attaining this vital goal." If you believed that in 2004, Dr. West, how do you rationalize your third-party candidacy this time around?
Well, it's a wonderful question because, as you know, I supported Brother Biden, given my profound disagreement with Biden as architect of mass incarceration, as supporter of invasion and occupation of Iraq. Why? Because I was thoroughly convinced that what the Republicans were presenting was so dangerous. But the sad thing is now, is that as dangerous as a second Trump term would be, if we don't break out of the corporate duopoly, we're going to be doing this for the next 10, 20, and 30 years. And I don't think the American project can withstand it. This shift from Democrats to Republicans, the Democrats feeding the Republicans, the Republicans feeding the Democrats, and yet poor people, working people, finding themselves pushed to the margins. It could be Cop City, both parties support. It could be expansion of military budget, both parties support. It could be policies advantageous to Wall Street, both parties support. And as you know, this is the 60th anniversary of Brother Martin Luther King's great speech. And I've always viewed myself as my own humble calling, trying to keep alive the great legacy of Martin Luther King Jr., Fannie Lou Hamer, Ella Baker, and Diane Nash. And that tradition has to continue on and on. I think of Les McCann's great classic, compared to what, 1969? Compared to what at this point with these parties? Let's try something new.
I love her face during that. Colin, can we get a freeze grab or kind of freeze her face to look like, you know, I'm like pretending to care what you have to say. I'm pretending to be, you know, your sister and you're my brother. But I'm just gearing up to continue this jousting match to get you to drop out of the race. It's just unbelievable. This is the new Meet the Press moderator, by the way. So, you know, we're graduating from Chuck Todd to this. But hey, I think that's one of the best answers Cornel West has got given as far as why this time is different. Interesting that they had to go back all the way to 2004, which is a little different considering Cornel West was saying, yeah, hold your nose, vote for Kerry, because we got to get Bush and this war out of the office, where at that point in 2004, you already have, you know, over 1,000 or so U.S. soldiers who have died, not to mention the, at that point, countless Iraqis, innocents who died, the wounded, the maimed, the fact that Bush was doubling down on that war. Yeah, it was a considerably different scenario when you're trying to end a ground war that the United States lied us into. But that's what you're trying to gotcha Cornel West on? Well, you said vote for the Democrat then during a hot war that we had American troops for no reason in. But Cornel West, I think, basically answered the way he should be answering. I'd like to hear more of this, where he's basically saying we can't just go in this endless hamster wheel, because if we go in this endless hamster wheel where, well, you got to hold your nose because fascism, got to hold your nose because we got to stave off this existential threat. We're going to be doing this for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, because it's always going to be a lesser of two evils situation. Because even if you stave off the Trump or the DeSantis or this and that, you're getting a more corporate form of fascism. So we're now, I don't know, 5 minutes, 6 minutes into this interview. Maybe, just maybe, she'll pivot off trying to get him to drop out, pivot off trying to guilt him out of running, keep asking him the same question dressed up in different language. Maybe, just maybe, hey, what's your defining policy? What would you do? How would you get it through Congress? You think that's coming? Probably going to be disappointed.
Dr. West, as you know, though, if you look back throughout history, third-party candidates have at times made the difference in presidential elections.
Seem to make a difference. You ever hear of manufacturing consent? You ever hear of narratives, pushing the narrative? This is Meet the Press. She's saying Jill Stein seemed to make the difference. I've already exhaustively explained video after video. It's not that she seems to have made the difference. She mathematically did not make the difference. As Vox pointed out, of all places, even if Jill Stein was not on the ballot, Hillary Clinton would have still lost, because she would have tied in two of the three states she needed, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, and Michigan. She would have tied in two of those states, which would have ended up giving the Electoral College to Trump regardless. Polls and surveys of Jill Stein voters have shown that they would just not have voted if Jill Stein was on the ballot, not on the ballot. Not that they would have voted for Joe Biden, in that case, Hillary Clinton, if Jill Stein was not on the ballot. But they want to push this narrative, which is not based in fact, which she knows. That's why she has to couch it with, well, it sure seems this way. Ugh.
Would you be okay if at the end of the day, the vote totals came back, you stayed through the entire race, and it was clear that your candidacy helped deliver former President Trump another term in office?
Well, the vast number of voters who would vote for a Green Party and myself either would not vote at all or would never, ever, ever vote for Biden or Trump. And that's very important to keep in mind, because there's this narrative, I think it's a false narrative, thinking that somehow they're choosing between Biden and myself. No, not really. They've given up on Biden. What is it now? 48% of our precious fellow citizens do not vote at all, my dear sister. That's not a good sign in a democracy that's already in decay. That's not a good symptom of a democracy already experiencing a kind of decadence. We've got to bring new people in, and neither party is really interested in speaking to that 48% that has given up on American democracy.
What do you say to your fellow progressives, AOC, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Senator John Fetterman, who've expressed their real concerns about a third-party candidacy? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez says, quote, "It's very difficult to square the very real threat of a Republican presidency with the risk of giving up the very small margin of electoral votes needed to ensure that President Biden wins." John Fetterman says, "I fundamentally believe that you don't mess around with the kinds of highest stakes we're dealing with. Can you just imagine what a second term of Trump would be? It's all going to be about revenge." What do you say to your fellow progressives who are expressing deep concerns about a third-party candidacy?
Well, I think one thing to keep in mind is that 1 out of 8 of the voters for Trump voted for Bernie Sanders. See, that Trump's followers are not homogeneous and monolithic. If you can speak to their pain, if you can speak to their frustration, they will never vote for Democrats. But many of them would be open to those who are speaking to their needs. They don't have to follow the Pied Piper, the neo-fascist Pied Piper with Trump. A new vision, a different alternative can convince a significant number of them. And so, again, I'm resisting the notion that somehow it's just a matter of myself and Brother Biden that people are choosing between. No, we've got large numbers of non-voters who are interested, especially young people. Look at the percentage of young people. Only 20-some% participate at all. I want to speak to those young folk. I want to try to galvanize their energy.
Did you see that eye roll there? Did you see that eye roll? Listen, this is not shocking, but it's kind of absurd at this point. And frankly, love you, Brother West. You're too nice to these folks. Maybe push them to, maybe, can I get one question on policy? Can I get one question on what I would do as president? Or you just want to continue this campaign to get me to drop out? I'm not even going to play the next question because it was, again, are you going all the way or might you still drop out? But at the end of the day, it's just on display. Whether it's Meet the Press, CNN, Politico, they're all working for the masters, which are the corporations that own them, that do not want any alternative to the two-party duopoly. Even these corporations that, huff and puff about Trump and threatening democracy, they'd happily take Trump again because they'll get their tax cuts and deregulation. But even changing the Overton window, even snipping 5%, for a Green Party candidate, maybe going past 5% if Cornel West could achieve that, which I think is doable. They do not want that. These networks don't want it. Their corporate owners do not want it, because then it opens Pandora's box and breathes life into a third-party movement for fourth party, fifth party, etc. You're going to continue to see the same questions asked of Cornel West, only repackaged in different words. But I do hope we hear more of Cornel West messaging on, we cannot continue this hamster wheel, because they're going to be continuing the same stale status quo choices of shoot me in the head and die quickly, or poison me and possibly die slower for the next 10 to 20 years.